Hey, welcome to another episode. I'm Cliff. Today I'm going to be making a barbecue crank ring. I've been working on the Santa Maria barbecue. The standard hand crank isn't going to work because it's just too long. The barbecue is going to probably be about waist height, and then the crank is up here. To crank it all the way around, you really just can't reach. So if you have a ring, then you can just spin it, and your hand is always in one spot. So to make the ring, I'm going to be using the Harbor Freight tubing roller. I've had this one for quite some time. Just been sitting in the corner of my shop. Now, if you are thinking about getting one of these, or already have one, when you do set this thing up, make sure when you put the dies in, there's no slop. You got to make sure it's straight. To help you out with doing that, put a piece of pipe in that matches the dies, and then it'll get you kind of where you need to be. But then if there's any gap in between the steel and the spacers, put washers in there. Don't put them on the outside, put them on the inside. The center one doesn't matter too much. It shouldn't have excessive amount of play, but that kind of play, that's fine. I can make that work. I could probably switch around a few more washers to make it a little bit more stable, but it's fine. Usually when you don't have these things set up right, they like to corkscrew, and they don't like to roll straight and square. You'll send it through and it'll go one way. Having these solid with as minimal slop as possible is key to making your bend straight. A lot of people will actually take this roller and then they have aftermarket upgrades for it, like wings, so you can bring your die out more. You can do thicker materials and more downward pressure. Along with the wings, they also have a bottle jack upgrade. I have not done that to mine. I don't use it enough. This will work just fine for what I'm doing. I don't build roll cages or anything like that, so I just leave it standard. You can get an electric pipe threader that'll fit on this. Swag Off-Road offers the kit, the weld-on kit to do it. I've done one of those. It's pretty cool. It just goes on there, and you don't have to crank it anymore. You just use the machine that spins it for you. So it makes things easier. But like I said, I don't do anything too crazy, just simple stuff. So I'm just using this. And having the dies closer in means you're not going to have that much runoff. So you're going to get the maximum use out of the material. Like if your dies are out here, you're going to have that much runoff that's not going to be bent. So more spacing means more wasted material. But it's kind of a give or take kind of deal. It all depends on the material you're using. Today, we're just using 1-inch tubing. Using one of these, it takes a little bit of finesse. You can't just put it in there and roll it. You really just got to roll it through, make sure it goes through straight. If it goes to one side, make sure you push it all the way through and then correct it straight. And then when you roll it back the other way, you hold it straight. And when it goes out the other side, if it's not straight, you keep it up straight with the die. When you're looking at it, you got to look at the die. This is what I use is the die to the thread. Make sure it's in line with that every time when you send it through. So send it through, make it straight, or make sure it's straight. Send it through this way, same thing. Make sure it's straight. And just do that every time until you get desired curve. So of course I'm going to be moving forward and showing you hands-on how to use this. To start out, I'll trace on the ground size that I want, and I'll either go off the OD of the pipe or the ID. OD or ID. So you trace out your circle. There's your circle. You probably can't see that. Trace out your circle, roll it. If you think it's close enough to your circle, take it out of the bender or check it. If it's too big, put it back in. Roll it until you get there. Now don't go too much. If you go too much, you can't take the bend out. It's hard. It's not going to be fun. So just slowly creep up on it, just little by little. Initially put it in, bring some pressure down on it, roll through twice. Do a half a crank, roll it through twice, see where you're at. Crank it down again, roll through twice. Now when you're getting closer, instead of a half a turn, do a quarter turn. If that's too much, do an eighth of a turn. But the closer you get to the shape that you want, crank down on it less. Sometimes, if there's pressure on it and you want it bent just a little bit more, just send it back through again. It'll move just a little bit. But doing that enough and it doesn't move, just crank the pressure down such a small amount. And just send it through. Slowly creep on it and just don't overbend. When you overbend, you can't take it out. You can stick it in a vise, but you'll be bending in one spot, not the whole thing. For a nice uniform bend, creep up on it. So I got a 20-foot stick of 1-inch tubing. I had it cut in half so I could just stick it in my truck and take it home. This ring isn't going to be too big. Being as I'm not having that much runoff, I'm just going to go ahead and cut that 10-footer in half and run with that, see where it gets me. I'll at least get 3.5 feet of curve. And I'm going to be doing that twice. So you do one half, and then the other half. Then you weld those together.
If you like this video, find it valuable to you, subscribe if you want to see more. I use many Harbor Freight tools. Some are good, some are bad. But if you got a question on something and I have it, I'll try to shoot you in the right direction or give you some good information.
So, let's go ahead and get into rolling.
So before we start, I wanted to introduce my buddy John. He's a plumber during the week, and on any Saturday he's usually grilling something. So I wanted to see what he thought about this build. So to start out, I used a string to simulate the radius to help determine the size of ring that's going to be needed. Once you decide on a radius, then you tie a knot on both sides of the string so you can trace it on the ground and use as a template. You don't have to use a template, but this is one of my methods. You can actually get the diameter and times that by 3.14 to get your overall circumference, and then split that in half, and that is going to be the formed material length of one side. So I'm going to cut this 10-footer in half and roll one 5-foot piece. When putting material into the roller, make sure to feed it through all 3 dies. Then crank down to where it's just a little bit of pressure to start with. Then crank it down to keep the pressure. And keep an eye on the tubing to make sure it's rolling through straight. You got to really keep an eye on it when you get close to your bend because it'll start walking on you. You're going to have to correct it, then add a little bit of pressure and roll it through while holding it. Then when you think you're close, take it out and check it on your template. If it's not close enough, put it back in the roller and roll just a little bit more like I said before. This one's good, so we're going to go ahead and roll the next one. Now that both sides are formed, I use the template to mark where I need to cut it at so it'll form a perfect circle. Now that the two halves are formed and cut, now they can be welded together. I start by clamping them to a flat surface and tacking one end. If one end is offset, you can either clamp or hold it together while you tack it. In this case, I just used the plumber. Now that it's fit, I check the diameter in two directions. Make sure it's flat, then complete the welds. If it's a little bit out of round, you can either use a come along or clamp it into place while you're welding your center supports. Then all that's left to do is to weld it in place. And that concludes this video. If you want to see a time lapse of this barbecue build, like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified when a new video is released. Thanks for watching.